What went right? What went wrong for the 49ers? It's time to take a deep dive and go upon further review of what I saw in the All 22 film. We're going to talk about all of it and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. It was a tough one against the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday, and the San Francisco 49ers were unable to get over the hump and defeat the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And it's tough to say. The 49ers had a lot of things that happened during this football game, some of them just awful for the season overview, what's going to happen in the season moving forward. And of course, we got to talk about all that. And of course, Brandon Ayuk, if you haven't heard by now, Brandon Ayuk is going to be out for the remainder of the season. And the question mark is, how quickly can he come back next year? There's a real chance it will be into the season before Brandon Ayuk is able to help the 49ers again. So 2025, that's Ayuk. He tore his ACL and MCL, and they're still concerned there could be even more damage. So a significant knee injury for Brandon Ayuk. And prayers go out to Brandon Ayuk. I feel bad for him. It's been a tough season for him, dealing with all the contract situation. That he gets out there, and he just hasn't looked like himself. He had like one half this season where he really looked like Brandon Ayuk, and I feel bad for him. I never want to see a player get hurt, especially a significant injury like this. So, Ayuk, it's too bad what happened. And the 49ers now are stacking injuries when it comes to wide receiver because Deebo Samuel is in the hospital right now dealing with pneumonia. So we've got a situation where those two guys, Ayuk's case, we're probably not going to have much conversation about him until 2025. And Deebo's dealing with pneumonia. Don't know what that means for Sunday. I guess we'll wait and see how this week plays out. But we forget that Jawan Jennings missed the game as well because he was dealing with a hip problem. So the 49ers' top three wide receivers at about halfway through this football game are unavailable. It's just a crazy thing. And sometimes that's how the injury bug happens. It just completely depletes an entire position group. And the 49ers were dealing with that in this game. So Ayuk out for the year. Debo's on a wait and see. Jawan, wait and see. We'll see what happens with them moving forward. And of course, that meant a lot of playing time for young players. Ricky Pearsall, who made his debut, and congratulations to Ricky Pearsall for having his first NFL catch. Congratulations. Jacob Cowing making plays as well. So the 49ers, they know what they've got ahead of them, the Dallas Cowboys. But we're going to talk a lot about what happened in this Chiefs game because breaking it down, I think you get one feeling from what happened from watching it in the TV copy. And it doesn't mean your feelings are always wrong, but of course it can be emotional. And when you take the emotion out of it and you watch it back, you watch it on the All 22 and you break it down, you get a clearer picture. Sometimes it doesn't get any better. You still have those moments where you're frustrated, but then sometimes also you see things that you didn't see before, and maybe you're excited about certain guys. So there's going to be a mixture in this from things we saw. It's an honest conversation on Monday. What I saw on film, the good things, the bad things. And the film doesn't lie. So if I say something that you don't agree with, that's okay. That's my opinion, and that's what I'm going with. I have nothing behind it. I have no reason to give anything else other than my honest opinion because I'm not here to push any narratives. I could really care less. I'm just kind of going off what I see on film, and that's it. The same way that I would have done with my guys when I was coaching is you just tell the truth. That's why they have Tell the Truth Monday. You tell it, and whatever happens, that's where it's at. So that's what we're getting into this episode. Little updates on the injuries there. And we'll, of course, during the week, keep everybody monitored on what's going on. But please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on. during games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football to Major League Baseball playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online, the game starts here. And so for the 49ers, I think it was easy to tell that there were a lot of mistakes, and some of those mistakes were very obvious. You have Brock Purdy throwing 3 interceptions. And whenever you have a quarterback that turns over the ball that much, you're not expected to win. Of course, Patrick Mahomes turned the ball over twice, and he's a guy that's thrown for 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions this season. It hasn't been a great performance for Mahomes, yet his team is undefeated. So you can overcome turnovers. I don't know if you can overcome 3 turnovers like the 49ers had with the interceptions. That's really tough. Then you throw in a bad special teams blunder as well, allowing the big punt return by McCole Hardman that gets a short field for Kansas City when really they hadn't had a whole lot going on offense yet. And those are just big pivotal plays that hurt the football team. So 49ers know they've got to be better. They had mistakes in this football game. I'm not going to argue that because I seen them, when I was breaking it down. So let's get into this a little bit. And I think mistakes at key moments was a real struggle. You would have something dialed up. Kyle would create a play, and I seen open receivers in this game, and that's when Jake Brendel would miss a block or would call the wrong blocking protection, or you would have Eric Saubert and Aaron Banks, trip each other and go down and create a sack opportunity. It was just the name of the game, right? You have it schemed up. You're going to get a big first down on this play, and all of a sudden Brandon Ayuk misses a block on Trim McDuffie, or Jacob Cowing doesn't even block the right guy. In fact, he doesn't block either one of the most dangerous guys, his guy or the next most dangerous, but goes and blocks Ricky Pearsall's. Those were the kind of things that were happening in this game, and some of it is compounded by injury. Now, the next man up mentality is a real thing, and you expect guys to step in. But when you start getting to wide receivers 4, 5, 6, and they haven't repped this stuff consistently, you start getting some of the things that we were seeing on film, including a guy like Ronnie Bell. And I know Ronnie Bell, he gets criticized a lot, but I want to give him a little bit of props for something he did in this game. There's a play where Ricky Pearsall doesn't know where to go. And Ronnie Bell tells him, Pearsall, line up right here. He tells him inside, and then he turns, and as Kittle's going to shift to the other side, tells him that not only is he supposed to be right there, but also he's going to exit motion and go out. And it's on a play that the exit motion creates a little bit of an extra run lane. So Ronnie Bell taking a little bit extra time, and there's going to be plenty of criticism for guys like Ronnie Bell and others who didn't have their best games. But here's a little situation where you got to give praise on a young player who's only in his second year, helping another player understand what to do because he's been in that situation. I just thought that was a good detail. Also, another thing that I wanted to point out before I get into some of the other things is overall hustle. I seen people putting out that maybe they didn't hustle as hard. I didn't think that was the case. I thought the 49ers played really, really hard for 60 minutes. Now, did they start dragging at the end of the game as the defense was starting to get tired? Absolutely. But I didn't think it was lack of effort. Getting into the fourth quarter, I kept waiting for that moment when I was going to see the lack of effort, and I did not see that. Do I think that there was lack of effort on the Patrick Mahomes 33-yard carry? I do not. I think that they were a little bit nervous about the fact of hitting Patrick Mahomes along the sideline, and what they're going to have to do is not err on the side of caution, but they've got to make sure they get their hands on him. And when you get down to the goal line, a guy like Malik Mustafa, now that time Patrick Mahomes went out of bounds. Well, when they don't go out of bounds the first time, the second time you got to blast them. And I think that's what the 49ers would do. We know that if that was not D. Winters, if that was Dre Greenlaw, Patrick Mahomes would have been in row number 2, and we'd have been talking about whether it was a penalty or not. That's one of the tough situations the NFL puts defensive players in. The protection of quarterbacks makes it so it's a little bit more difficult. Now, there's plenty of other things along that play. Number 1, the 49ers lost pass rush lane integrity. That's true. Number 2, Sam Okawanu couldn't get off a block. Whether it was because Okawanu was held or not, I'll let you determine if that's the case. If you go over to my All-22, I will be breaking that down over on Patreon, and I will let you know if that's the case or not. If it's okay to hug, then he wasn't held. Just saying. And there are moments like that for both teams, and as long as it's called both ways, I don't have a problem with it. So just so you know, I'm not one of those ones that's like, oh, everything has to be a penalty. I'm not one of those guys. But pass rush lane integrity was lost. Mahomes gets outside, and Fred Warner has an opportunity to make this play, and he's not able to make it. And Fred makes a lot of plays, so we got to give him a little grace on it, but it was tough. Now let's talk about some of the mistakes on offense. Jake Brendel missed a couple of times. He should have slid protection other ways. That was tough. They had another opportunity where the pass rush was getting there just a little bit early on some of the blitzes. If it would have been like a half a second difference, there probably would have been a touchdown to Jordan Mason in the second half. Jordan Mason was running up the seam. He was open, and Brock Purdy just didn't have the time to go through his reads. It literally needed about a half a second, so he ended up trying to throw it to Kyle Juszczyk on an ugly pass, but it would have been a touchdown, and that would have gave the San Francisco 49ers the lead. That's how close it was to things kind of tipping the scales and going the other direction. That's what football is, right? Any given Sunday, it's a game of inches, and it really was in this matchup. You just had mistakes coming at the wrong time. It would be like receivers get open, and Brock Purdy drops back, and then the offensive line doesn't do their job. The next time, the offensive line does a great job. Brock Purdy's got a clean pocket, and the wide receivers don't get open. And then another time, it's like the line did a good job. The wide receiver gets open, and Brock Purdy misses him. It was just a combination of things, and that means you're out of tune as an offense, and you've got to get better, and you've got to figure out how to clean things up, and that's going to be on Kyle Shanahan. So those are some of the criticisms that can be levied towards Kyle Shanahan is your team is expected to play well, so you've got to make sure they know what they're supposed to do. I don't think it's a scheme problem for the mere fact that I seen receivers open, that I seen running lanes open for Jordan Mason, that they were, kind of going through it. I thought there were a couple of situations where maybe Brock Purdy should have checked to a different play. Maybe he didn't have the ability. That we don't know. But I thought overall, the scheme-wise, it wasn't a problem. I thought execution of scheme was a problem as far as executing the plays consistently. So you've got to put that on the players, but also you put a little bit on Kyle because it's his job and it's his coach's job to make sure those players are ready. And I think that they're trying. I think they're really trying to do it. But right now, it was a little out of sorts against Kansas City. The good news is the Kansas City Chiefs defense is probably the best defense the 49ers are going to face this season and the best defense that they've seen so far. So it wasn't Purdy. It wasn't perfect, but it's not all bad. There are still things that you can learn from this game that can help you go away. So the offense, I felt, is one step away. It's like they need one half a second more, or they need one read more, or they need, one better throw, or what. It's one step away right now. They've got to figure this out. And it reminds me of some other times when the 49ers had offense early on in seasons where it struggled, and it felt like they were just one thing away. One piece was missing, and I think that we know that there are pieces missing. And that's why the second half was definitely not as good on offense as the first half. And that's a struggle. Now, they did get the run game going. Some adjustments at halftime helped with that, but it was a struggle. Now, a good thing for the 49ers, they were able to dial up some explosive against the Chiefs. And I talked about that in my game preview show and some of the shows during the week, that, they were going to give the 49ers a couple of chances. And when they got those big opportunities, they needed to be able to make big plays on them. And you saw earlier in a drive, and they had Kyle Juszczyk come out of the backfield and follow Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk broke it off, and then right behind him, Juszczyk broke it off. And they saw the way the defense played it. And then they came back to it about 3 or 4 plays later. This time, George Kittle went in the backfield instead of Kyle Juszczyk. And Kittle was the one that motioned out and then went down the field. And they expected him to break it off. And he didn't. He went vertical. And Justin Reed, one of those tendency breakers, Justin Reed stopped. And you had George Kittle deep on the vertical route, one-on-one. And if Brock Purdy could have stepped into the throw and got a little bit more on this, I think it would have been a touchdown. I mean, he had Reed beat by, it's not Jordan Reed, he had Reed beat by 5 or so yards. So it was a big play down the field and the potential to have a whole shot there. Then later on in the second half, you had Jacob Cowing one-on-one with a backup cornerback, and he runs the hezzy and go, the stop and go, and boom, Brock Purdy gets it down the field. Great adjustment by Jacob Cowing to the outside to make the catch, and you're in business. Now, unfortunately, right, red zone trips on both of those, and you don't walk away with any points. Ronnie Bell interception, a pass intended for Ronnie Bell interception after the George Kittle one. And the other one, You have a situation where you get a turnover inside the red zone. Brock Purdy trying to throw it to Chris Conley. Ball gets hit. I don't know if that affects the throw or what is. I think it does. And you get the interception. But those are two red zone trips that change this game. Because even if you walk away with a field goal on both, you're talking 18 points. That would have been 21-18. Now, Chiefs ended up getting a touchdown to make it 28. But I think it just changes the way the game is played. If all of a sudden the game is 15-14 Niners, then the Chiefs go and play this game a little bit differently. So I thought those were pivotal interceptions. Ronnie Bell was in man coverage when he broke off. I've seen people on Twitter saying, and people that are legitimate, guys like Johnny Dell saying, hey, he ran the wrong route. And then you got Kyle Shanahan in the presser saying it was a bad throw. I don't know exactly what it was because I don't know what the route concept was or what was asked of Ronnie Bell, but I do know he's in man coverage. He created separation. And it was an errant pass. So there was a miscommunication by any way you want to break it down. That's exactly what it was. So that was tough. Now, also key penalties. The first drive of the game, Jake Brendel gets a penalty on a run play. And I seen him reach out and grab the shoulder. I think everyone saw it. I don't like that call as an offensive line guy. I think that wasn't very much of a penalty. I think that the guy was already moving away from it. But if you're going to call that, you need to make sure you're calling it both ways, and I don't think it was consistent. We got two penalties one on Jake Brendel, one on Trent Williams. The Jake Brendel one, they weren't able to overcome. That forced a 2nd and 21. They were never able to overcome it, and so they ended up having to punt. When you look at what happened with Trent Williams, he did reach out and grab Michael Bolton. There's no way to argue that one at all. He reached out, grabbed him across the chest. It's a penalty. They were able to overcome that. They ran a deep dig route to George Kittle against cover 2. Boom, big time throw by Brock Purdy through with anticipation for the completion. That was really nice. And George Kittle played good in this football game. He had 9 catches for over 90 yards. I mean, he was out there doing it. And at some point, right, he's your main threat. And you could see the Chiefs, they went from bracket covering Brandon Ayuk and putting a lot of attention against him to putting a lot of attention on George Kittle. And I think that made it a little bit tougher for him as the game progressed. Now, the injuries at wide receiver definitely didn't help this offense. I talked about Cowing not making a block. That was really hurtful because that was on the 3rd and 1 play. That's that pivotal play down in the red zone. People saying, hey, is it the end of the first half? The 49ers should have went run on 2nd and 1, not run on 3rd and 1. Either way, if you're going to block it the way the 49ers ended up blocking with Jacob Cowing, not blocking McDuffie at all, you're not going to get a first down. And that's exactly what happened. Jacob Cowing is supposed to block McDuffie on that play. George Kittle is going in to get Bolton. He's supposed to get a body on McDuffie. He does not. He goes up to the 3rd level, and you see Ricky Pearsall is going after one guy. Cowing ends up blocking him. And Pearsall kind of looks around and starts trying to go after somebody else. Just a miscommunication. And this is what happens, right, when you get to wide receivers 4, 5, and 6. And I think we got a small little glimpse of why Cowing hasn't been playing as much. It's probably the blocking portion of his game. We've seen the passing portion. It looked pretty good. Caught a screen. Looked pretty good. Got 8 yards on that the play before. And then you see this situation where he doesn't make a play and McDuffie's able to step right in there and make the tackle. Bravo to him. One-on-one with Jordan Mason in the hole, and he does a good job. But I think that those injuries to Juwan and injury to Debo and Brandon Ayuk were pivotal. But all 3 of those guys could have made that block or even afforded the 49ers the option to have Chris Conley on that side instead of Jacob Cowing. So that did not help this football team. Like I said, it's not all bad for Cowing, but we're keeping it real. The aspect of him blocking wasn't really that great. And then when it comes to Ricky Pearsall, I think Ricky was doing his best. But I don't think he's, number one, all the way back. He didn't look like he was fully comfortable within the offense. He went out there and competed. He went out there and battled. He blocked. He made his first catch. He was trying to get open. The other thing there was a couple of plays, and the one on the 2-point conversion where he doesn't get his head around, that one I think he should have gotten his head around. There was another one, though, down the field a little bit where he's at the top of his stem, and he's getting a little last jab step before he makes his break, and Brock had to throw the ball early. And I just don't want him to get criticized for not having his head around, because as soon as he broke out of his stem at the top of his route, he whipped his head around. The problem was the ball had to come out early because Brock was getting pressure in his face, and so it whizzes right past him. That wasn't on Ricky Pearsall. The 2-point conversion, yeah, he's got to whip his head around a lot sooner on an out route like that. And so one on him, one not. Just a full transparency here. But I think Pearsall, just like talked about with Ronnie Bell telling him where to go, there's another instance where Brock Purdy's under center and he's trying to motion. And they're down in the red zone. He's motioning, hey, Ricky, you're supposed to come across. And the play was designed to go one way, and Pearsall's going to take his defender out of the play, and he doesn't. And so those are the little things that maybe don't show up on film originally when you watch it, that are more evident when you break it down. So broke that down on Patreon. If you guys want to check that out, go ahead. But I thought that, Pearsall's doing his best. I just think he's going to need a little bit of time to adjust to the 49ers system. I think it's going to be good. I mean, he's going to have to compete in this Dallas game. 49ers, all hands on deck when it comes to wide receiver. And then coming out of the bye week against Tampa Bay, I feel like that'll be the best opportunity for him to be more into this offense and be ready to go. Now, as far as offensive line, Colton McKivitz had a really bad block in the red zone late in the football game that led to Brock Purdy's interception. That is 100% accurate. But I think if you look at his game in totality, he actually played really well in this game, competed at a high level. In fact, I thought the whole offensive line competed at a high level. I thought there were definitely moments where they had breakdowns. I thought Jake Brendel probably was the most noticeable. A couple of run blocks he wasn't able to make. Dominic Pooney getting pushed back by Wharton. Not great, but they were dealing with Chris Jones, and they were dealing with a pretty good defensive line. And I thought they did pretty good overall. I wouldn't give it an A. I definitely wouldn't give them a high grade, but I thought they competed. They gave Brock Purdy time for the most part, and it's just unfortunate they couldn't get it all to work out. But I do think that Colton McKivitz needs to be better on those situations. And, I mean, Karlaftis made a great move. We got to give him credit on that. But overall, I think the offensive line held up and gave the 49ers opportunities to make plays down the field. They just weren't able to consistently do it. Now, on defense, I got to start with Malik Mustafa. I thought Malik Mustafa was flying around all throughout this game, making big, impactful hits, coming up as alley defender and absolutely lighting it up. We haven't seen the safety do this for the 49ers since Talanoa Hufanga all-pro season. Like, that's literally the type of effort he was coming with and the type of discipline as far as tackling that he was making. It wasn't all perfect for Malik Mustafa, but it can't possibly be for any of these players, especially against a team as good as the Chiefs. But I thought he did really good, and I really liked it. I thought it was a continued improvement off what he did last week. He's just getting better and better. And I think that's good news for the 49ers. They're going to need Mustafa. They're going to need him. And you can see he's going to figure this thing out. And then the question mark's going to be Jair and Talanoa Hufanga when he comes back, or Malik Mustafa and Talanoa Hufanga when he comes back. Just saying, like, that might be a question mark. That's how good Malik Mustafa played, especially as an alley defender in the run game. I thought he did really good. Now, when it comes to Jair Brown, I had him a little bit down on the list, but I want to talk about him since I just brought him up. I thought he battled against Travis Kelce all game. I thought that that's a tough matchup, but this is what the 49ers have done to Travis Kelce, right? They've put safeties on him, and I thought Jair Brown did a really good job against him. I thought there was the occasional play that Kelce got him, right? They had that one play they were running the bunch set, and they ran a whip route, and he got a first down. Jair was trying to make the tackle, and Travis Kelce spun back inside and got a first. Great play by Kelce. But I thought Jair was competing play in and play out with Travis Kelce. I didn't have a problem with the way he handled it. I didn't think that was a penalty down on the goal line where Patrick Mahomes ends up getting the touchdown on the run anyways for defensive holding. Didn't think so. I thought those two guys were just locked up against each other, and I have no problem with them lining them up one-on-one. 49ers actually played coverage tremendous on that play. It just came down to not being able to get to Mahomes, not keeping pass rush lane integrity, and to be able to keep him out. And one of the reasons why Jordan Elliott was trying to rush, and he got kind of off balance and folded outside, and when he was no longer in there as a plug defender, boom, Mahomes had a clear path to the end zone. Mustafa sitting in the middle of the field, and he just started running with Worthy, who was being covered. It wasn't like Worthy was open, but he started moving with him, and when he did, he took himself just to the right. That didn't allow him to get downhill and vertical quick enough to get to Patrick Mahomes. And of course, Mahomes lowered his shoulder, right, and rocked Malik Mustafa on the play. But I think if Malik would have been where he was right in the middle of the field and just went vertical right away, never had flowed with Worthy, I think he would have stopped Patrick Mahomes short. It's one of those interesting things, but give credit to Mahomes. Dude's a big guy, and he kind of brought the wood on that one. But was it good for Jair? No. Did he have one mistake that could have got the 49ers burned deep? Mustafa's running with Worthy down the field, and luckily Patrick Mahomes overthrew everyone. Yes. Once again, he jumped a route he shouldn't have jumped. He had deep half, and he didn't take care of it. Could have been a bad play for the Niners. But overall, there was some good things from Jair Brown. I think there's still bad, but I think there's some good too, and you can see some promise within him. Now let's talk about Nick Sorensen, because the conversation coming out of the game, 49ers need to fire Kyle, fire Nick Sorensen, fire Brian Schneider. And I think with Sorensen, you saw a defense that really competed as hard as they could, and I thought they held up for 3 quarters. They faced a lot of tough situations. They weren't getting any help from the offense with 3 turnovers. They weren't getting any help from the special teams as far as the big punt return by McCall Hardman. Those types of things in short fields are not exactly what helps you. So I thought that he did a pretty good job, though. I mean, he had, the first third down of the game, they're running cover 1 man coverage, and McCall Hardman runs that whip route that later on they run with Kelsey, and Yammer Lenore got caught up in traffic. Hardman gets a first down. The very next time they go to third down, they don't go cover 1. They switch it up. They're able to get off the field. And I thought that he did a good job of keeping mixtures in. Plus, I thought that some of the line stunts that they were pulling on defense were phenomenal. There was one during the game where they had Bosa and Warner to the right side, and Bosa came all the way around. They put 3 defenders and pushed them 2 defenders and pushed them across. Bosa came whipping around. He got right in Mahomes' face. It forced an errant pass. I thought it was a good job. I thought they got in Patrick Mahomes' face. They made him feel uncomfortable for a lot of this football game, and I thought they did an adequate job. They were able to get him down for a couple of sacks, able to force him to get rid of the football, make some errant throws. So I liked Sorensen's defense. I think if you would have told me that Patrick Mahomes was going to go 16 of 27 for 154 yards and get sacked twice for 9, including 2 interceptions, I would have told you the San Francisco 49ers were going to win, especially when you told me that Kareem Hunt was going to run the ball 22 times for 78 yards at 3.5 average. I wouldn't have thought the 49ers were going to lose. Now, of course, we got to remember Mahomes had the big scramble for 33 yards. McCall Hardman had the big explosive run for 30 on the jet sweep. But, I mean, overall, the 49ers defense came in there and competed. I was definitely happy with the way that they played. You've got to be able to hold up a little bit longer. Of course, Kansas City gets 14 in the second quarter, 14 in the fourth quarter. I think the 49ers were wearing down in that fourth as the 49ers offense just couldn't keep up to task. So it was really tough in this football game. But overall, great performance from several different players, including Deommodore Lenoir, who ends up getting an interception in this football game. Nick Bosa making plays in the backfield, getting after the quarterback. So there was a lot to like. Kalia Davis made a play, and I'm going to talk about Kalia Davis in a second. I didn't think it was all good, but you've seen some guys making plays, the line stunts, some of the adjustments when it came to linebackers and stats. And I don't know how you guys are feeling about several players, but I thought some key players played well, and I thought there were some flashes and some moments that I really liked. One drive that was probably the most frustrating to watch on film would have to be the Chiefs' first touchdown, where you got an opportunity to get off the field, and you've got a situation where they call Nick Bosa offsides. He obviously wasn't. I think it was actually on Sam Okuwanu. I think he was lined up in the neutral zone, but you had D. Winters flashing, and he makes the play when it comes against the screen in the backfield, and you're going to have 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 11, and I think the 49ers had an opportunity to force a field goal there, and they were unable to because of the penalties. And you had that. You also ended up having 12 men on the field. It was 3 penalties on that drive that really helped the Kansas City Chiefs get into the end zone. And those are unforced errors, and you can't have those. Now that was critical. So if you want to put that on Sorensen, completely okay with that, because discipline and the way the players are discipline-wise is on the coach. I just thought scheme-wise, he did a pretty good job. It kept them pretty much off balance. Second half, I know they turned to the run game pretty well. And like I've said before, 49ers defense is not built to play from behind. They're built to play from in front. Pass rushers, aggressive players up front. And that was a problem for the 49ers because there are still some issues when it comes to playing against duo blocks, and Kalia Davis struggled against duo blocks in this game. There's just no way to say it. Any other way is 3-4 yards getting pushed off the ball on plays, not all the plays, but several plays. And that just allows the Kansas City Chiefs to get to the 49ers linebackers and just get a real surge and be able to run the football. And when they got to the fourth quarter and they were able to bring in their 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets, and just run the ball downhill, the 49ers would force them to convert on third down, but they were able to for most of the drive. And that was where it kind of felt like they really wore the 49ers defense down. And we've seen that in some other games as well. 49ers need to get up if they want to win games. So I thought Kalia Davis really struggled with that, and it created some real running lanes in the second half for the Kansas City Chiefs. We talked about pass rush lane integrity earlier, but it was a little bit of a problem all game. You had your edge defenders coming upfield. You want them to get after Mahomes. I felt like you didn't get enough push from the interior defensive line. But I will say is that Malik Collins continued to have good plays. I liked Sam Okawanu rushing from the inside. I thought that was another wrinkle that we've seen over the last few weeks that I've liked from Coach Nick Sorensen. But you were also going against probably the best interior offensive line that you were going to go against. You have, Creed Humphrey in the middle. Then you have Thuney, and you have I just went blank on his name. But anyways, the right guard. They're really, really good. And so the 49ers know what they have to do against them, and they just weren't able to do it down the stretch. So they did a really good job. You got to give credit to the Kansas City Chiefs for playing really well, and their offensive line at the middle is their strength. And that created some opportunities for pass rush lane integrity to fall by the wayside and for Mahomes to get there. Now, I will say the 49ers, on a lot of those opportunities, had safeties or linebackers there in zone coverage to watch him. Now, the first time he scrambled, it wasn't. They were in man coverage, and Fred Warner was taken out of the way by covering someone not able to get there. But other ones, I talked about Mustafa. He was in zone coverage within striking distance. He was there. There's another one where they have an opportunity to get to him. So it wasn't like they didn't have someone all the time, like they were just turning and running. One bright spot, at least for one position group, is I thought Deommodore Lenoir, Charvarius Ward, and Renardo Green played pretty well in this game. Deommodore Lenoir comes up with a big interception. I know he gave up a couple catches, here and there, but I thought he competed. They played Xavier Worthy really good. Renardo Green did have a bad play where he allowed the Noah Gray, the tight end, to get free. He went off his zone and went into another area, and he should have been sitting in his deep third, and the play was there. It's a breakdown in coverage. Those are going to happen, but I thought overall they played pretty well, and welcome back to Charvarius Ward. He helped in the run game, and he competed on the outside, had a big pass breakup of Travis Kelce. Thought he was cooked there for a second. So I thought the cornerbacks ultimately played well, and it was Renardo Green over Isaac Yedem in this game. So Green continues to make some positive strides for the San Francisco 49ers defense. So you see some of the strengths, some of the weaknesses. D. Winters and Devondre Campbell continue to alternate nickel package plays. 49ers going back and forth between those. I thought that Devondre Campbell had a good game. And so I don't know how people feel about Devondre Campbell, but I thought he had a good game. I thought D. Winters had a good game. The tackle that he missed on the screen later in the game, he's pushed in the back. Just go back and watch it. That's why he goes flying by. I love the fact he pulled the trigger. I didn't see the push until I watched it later. It was 100% pushed in the back. And, that happens in football. You got to make sure you pull the trigger a little bit faster and get home and make the play. Now, 49ers defense, I felt like they wore down the stretch. And a lot of that because the offense and special teams did them no favors. And so the 49ers are going to need, that special teams unit to improve. And I don't know how they're going to do it. One area that they were good before was punt coverage. Well, guess what? It wasn't good in this game. As you get the big return by McCall Hardman, that was an explosive play. It can't happen. See 2 49ers on film falling down. Demetrius Flanagan fouls and Tatum Bethune. Ronnie Bell also fell down on the play. 3 49ers, in fact, fall down on the play. Just can't have that happen. So 49ers are going to have to do what they can, but who are you going to change out, right? This isn't one of those times where you can have a college roster where you have 100 guys or a high school roster where you have 100 guys and you're like, you know what? Ronnie Bell's really struggling. Let's put in so-and-so. You don't have that luxury. And so you're trying to find the guys that you can play, but you're also trying to make sure that you have players to be able to play position groups. So maybe Darrell Luter Jr. would be better at it or somebody else, but the 49ers got to figure something out. So It was definitely one of those games that's frustrating to watch, but there are things that you can be optimistic about. There are some things that you got to get better or you're not going to be able to win. But I felt like coming out of this game, the one thing that was clear, 49ers offense is one step behind. The injuries on offense mounting up has been a problem at the skill positions. You definitely notice that you're missing Christian McCaffrey, and it's not just in the running game where he is more decisive as far as reading holes. It has a little bit more of an ability to do certain things within the offense, but also the ability to create problems when it comes to the opposing team's linebackers and matchups. They didn't have to worry about Jordan Mason in the passing game very much in this game. So that's one element that's missing. 49ers are going to miss that until McCaffrey's back. Same with the wide receiver position. Now they've got to figure out how to replace Brandon Ayuk at X. That's going to be tough. Now, I have been asked by one of my patrons to do a video about 49ers trade targets and who they could possibly target. I am going to put that over on Patreon. They asked me about it. I'm going to do a deep dive, put that episode on Patreon. If you want to watch that, it's going to be available there. So you can go check that out. But thank you guys all for coming through and talking upon further review. If there was something I didn't touch on, let me know in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you have to say. It's hard to always touch on everything. And sometimes people see things that you don't see completely again, with that. And if you don't agree with me on something, go ahead and put it. I have no problem having a constructive conversation or even just listening to what you have to say. Always appreciate you all. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.